Welcome back to the Bitcoin Magazine Pro Bitcoin Masterclass series. Now in this episode 3, we're going to be taking into account everything we covered in the first 2 episodes. So if you haven't seen them already, I definitely recommend checking them out. But we're going to be looking at Bitcoin through a slightly different lens. In the first episode, we looked at Bitcoin as a network. We looked at it as a technology and philosophically what Bitcoin actually is and stands for. In the second episode, we looked at the users. We're looking at the sentiment and actual usage of Bitcoin to try and help us gain some insight into the health of the network. But Bitcoin, like I said in episode 1, is fairly unique in terms of its monetary policy, in terms of its economics, in terms of how it's actually entered into circulation. Today we'll be looking at Bitcoin miner data. Now, as I said, Bitcoin mining is similar in theory to gold mining. We have miners who are working around the clock to try and provide Bitcoin. Now, what we're looking at here is the Bitcoin hash rate. This is the computational power actually being used to supply and secure Bitcoin. Now, I'll give you some insights quickly into how Bitcoin is actually mined. So, like I said in episode 1, around every 10 minutes, we get a new Bitcoin block. Now, in these Bitcoin blocks are transactions. So the transactions are being verified by the Bitcoin nodes who are making sure that every transaction is valid, that no one's sending more Bitcoin than they have, and they're sending it to an address that is capable of receiving that Bitcoin. Now, once this transaction has been approved by the nodes, it enters the mempool, which again, we covered in episode 1. And then from that point, the miners are actually mining these blocks for these transactions to be included. Now, the process of mining is quite complex. It essentially uses some of the most specialized and advanced computer processing units to solve mathematical problems on the Bitcoin network. Essentially, for a block to be solved, it requires a valid answer, a valid response from these machines to essentially prove that the block is valid and allow those transactions to be included. Now, if you're the one that can mine the Bitcoin block, you get a significant reward. So there's a lot of competition. This is why we've seen the Bitcoin hash rate go practically exponential for the entire history of Bitcoin. The amount of hashes that this is actually using is significant. If you look at Bitcoin mining warehouses, you would see thousands and thousands of some of the world's most efficient mining equipment, some of the most efficient processing units, just to try and mine Bitcoin. Now, you may look at this and think, well, if this is increasing exponentially, how does Bitcoin maintain blocks that are coming through every 10 minutes very accurately on average? Well, this hash rate dictates the difficulty. Now, the Bitcoin miner difficulty updates around every 2 weeks. So what this is taken into consideration is how much hash rate is actually on the network, how many computers are essentially competing for Bitcoin blocks. Now, if this has increased very rapidly over the past fortnight, then what happens is the Bitcoin mining difficulty increases, which essentially means that miners are having to work especially hard to mine a Bitcoin block. And if we see the hash rate decrease, then we actually see the miner difficulty decreasing as well. So there may be a few days where Bitcoin adjusts to this. Maybe the tail end of these 2-week periods, Bitcoin is coming through a little bit slower at 11 or 12 minutes, or maybe coming through a little bit faster at 8 or 9 minutes. One thing to also take into consideration is nothing on Bitcoin is actually measured in time. It's all measured in blocks. So this Bitcoin miner difficulty, even though I say it's 2 weeks, it's around 2 weeks on average. But if this is increased or decreased, then it may be 13 days or 15 days. It's actually 2016 blocks. Now, what happens every 210,000 blocks is the actual amount of Bitcoin that is rewarded to miners decreases. I mentioned it in episode 1, but we have a Bitcoin halving event. So if you are the miner who successfully mines the Bitcoin block, you solve the complex equation that permits Bitcoin transactions to happen, you are rewarded with Bitcoin. Now, in Bitcoin's first epoch, if you'd like to call it, its first few years of existence, this was 50 Bitcoin. So we can see the miner revenue per day in BTC sometimes exceeded 15,000 Bitcoin. In the next epoch, so after 210,000 blocks from the Genesis block, Bitcoin's creation, the block reward for miners decreased by 50% to 25 Bitcoin. So we can see during these years, the Bitcoin miner block rewards was somewhere close to around 4,000, whereas previously it was averaging around 8,000. Now, after 2016 until 2020, this decreased 50% again. It was somewhere around 2,000 and into where we are today, where the Bitcoin reward for mining a block is 3.125 Bitcoin. Now, again, we can very accurately determine the inflation rate of Bitcoin going forward because we know every 210,000 blocks, we're going to have a halving event where the inflation rate decreases by 50%. So not only do the miners get rewarded in terms of new Bitcoin entering the system, entering the network, the new inflation rate of Bitcoin, because every transaction on the Bitcoin network has to pay a small fee like we looked at previously, the Bitcoin miners also get a revenue in fees. So the amount of money that people are paying to have their Bitcoin transactions actually accepted and go through. So we can see there's usually spikes again as Bitcoin is hitting these bull market peaks or just as we're getting these Bitcoin halving events. And sometimes again, this is exceeding thousands of Bitcoin per day earned by these miners. We're talking millions and millions of dollars. Now what we can do is once we take into consideration the hash rate, the difficulty, the miner revenue, etc., we can gain some insights into the underlying health of the Bitcoin network. So first and foremost, what we'll do is look at the Bitcoin Puell multiple. What this is looking at is the aggregated revenue of the Bitcoin miners in terms of block rewards and fees and converting that into USD denominated terms. Now, once we have that, we can essentially convert that into a yearly average. We can convert that into a rolling yearly average of earnings. So if miners are earning an incredibly high amount of Bitcoin compared to that yearly average, then this results in the Puell multiple increasing. Bitcoin miners are earning substantially more than they historically have done. And again, this gives us some good insight that the Bitcoin market cap is maybe getting a little bit overheated. The Bitcoin price probably can't be sustained at those levels considerably more. Now, this is usually because we're seeing more miners entering the network, trying to cash in on the rising prices. We're seeing more people using Bitcoin, so more transaction fees. So this results in considerably higher miner earnings. But the same is true for the downside. Once we see less miners actually mining, the hash rate declining, the difficulty declining, the on-chain activity reducing, then the Bitcoin miner earnings compared to the previous yearly average decreases substantially. And again, it gives us these really clear and obvious buy and sell zones for the Bitcoin price action. Now, what this can also do is give us some clear insight onto these Bitcoin halving events. If I just look at this period here, what we can see is, for example, here in 2024, pretty much overnight, well, in a blocks instant, essentially, after 210,000 blocks following the previous halving event, which is in 2020, we saw the Bitcoin miner revenue drop 50% practically instantly. So we can see the influence that these halving events have on the supply and demand economics of Bitcoin. But what we can also take into consideration is, like I mentioned previously, the Bitcoin hash rate gives us some insight into the confidence that miners have on the network. And it's usually been increasing. Historically, it's been pretty much on a non-stop uptrend. But what we can do is if we look at the average hash rate on two different time frames, so a 30-day, so we take the average hash rate over the past month, and a 60-day, so the past hash rate average over the last 2 months, what we can do is get the Bitcoin hash ribbons indicator. Now, what this does is tells us essentially if Bitcoin miners are giving up or if they're bullish on the upcoming price appreciation of Bitcoin. What we can see is once this blue line, which is the 30-day, crosses beneath the purple line, which is the 60-day, this background shaded area turns red, indicating that miners are becoming a little bit more bearish on the future of Bitcoin. Now, this isn't just sentiment analysis. This isn't looking at what their current feelings and emotions are. This is them actually turning off their machines. So it does give us some truly unparalleled insights into the expectations of the Bitcoin price action, because Bitcoin mining operations are multi-million-dollar operations. Some of them are huge public companies, so they really have to take it seriously when they're expanding operations or maybe cutting back to save costs. Now, what we can see, once this 30-day crosses back above the 60-day, this red shaded area goes white. And historically, this has been one of the most reliable indicators of upcoming bullish price action for Bitcoin. And we can see throughout the past few years, this has marked Bitcoin's upcoming periods of bullish price action almost to perfection. Now, like any indicator, no one is going to work perfectly. You're not going to find the Holy Grail here on Bitcoin Magazine Pro or anywhere else. It just doesn't exist. You're not going to find one data point which tells you with 100% accuracy when to buy and sell. This is why we need to combine a lot of our metrics. So if we look at something like the hash ribbons and the Puell multiple and the user data that we covered in episode 2, then it really clarifies the expectations of Bitcoin. This gives us insight from almost two different lenses, the users and the miners, but we also get some other insights from other places. It's almost like putting a jigsaw piece together. For example, if we look at the actual traders of Bitcoin, looking at the Bitcoin funding rates, this tells us how much the market traders are expecting Bitcoin's price to increase or decrease. So, for example, when this goes incredibly low into these red areas here, it indicates that people actively trading Bitcoin are anticipating the price to decrease. They're shorting the market, betting on the price to go down further. And again, what we see historically is when this is incredibly negative, indicating that everyone's especially bearish, they're betting on more and more price action decreases to the downside, it's a good time to start doing the opposite. And the same is true for the upside. Once everyone's incredibly bullish, paying huge amounts of money to really start longing Bitcoin, betting on further price increases, then again, this is a good area to potentially start scaling back, maybe being a little bit more cautious and defensive. So when we're doing this type of analysis, we're almost trying to paint a picture. Like I said, put a jigsaw together. And if we can analyze the market through multiple different lenses, not just the users, not just the network, not just the miners, but then the derivatives data as well, then it does give us some great insights onto the potential upcoming price action that we'll see in Bitcoin. Now, I hope you enjoyed the first 3 parts of this Bitcoin Masterclass series, going over the basics of Bitcoin data analysis and trying to understand Bitcoin itself, how the market works, and how we can use this data to, again, try and understand the health of the network and maybe time our investments and analysis a little bit better. And all of the data and metrics we discussed in this is entirely free. I definitely recommend checking them all out on bitcoinmagazinepro.com. But in the next 3 episodes, we'll be taking things a little bit further. We'll be looking at other influencing factors on the Bitcoin price action. We're going to look at macroeconomic factors. We're going to look at global liquidity, correlations to equity markets. We're going to look at how we can dollar cost average into Bitcoin with more accuracy and look at the returns from that. We're going to take everything a step further to go from Bitcoin on-chain data analyst to Bitcoin on-chain data expert. So I hope you all enjoyed the first half of this masterclass series, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next 3 episodes.